Creep in the bus. I'm a 16-year-old guy, and I wasn't expecting this to happen to me. So, I just want to point out that this doesn't only happen to women. 2 days ago, I was coming back from school. For background information, the bus students go to goes to the center of the town. I take that one, and then I take another bus to get to my stop, where I have to walk maybe 200 or 300 meters away from my house. I took the bus from to school towards the center, then waited at my stop. There were other kids from other school that waited, and the creep. He wore his hat down, and was glancing at me every now and then. I ignored him by putting my earphones on. This lasted for 10 minutes. Until the bus finally came, I forgot about the guy, but was still creeped out. I got on the bus, and took an empty seat. I noticed the creep get on the bus too, and he was walking towards me. My red flags weren't out yet, but I still checked just in case. He took a seat behind me, and then the bus started heading to the next stop. I heard something in the background of my music. I turned the volume down, and I heard a voice from behind me. From this same fucking guy. I pressed pause, and heard him ask, "Hey, I think we live near each other. Can you just tell me at which stop we are supposed to leave?" Of course, you'd think it's stupid of me to tell him the truth, but it'd be a bit of an asshole move to tell him bullshit if he lives near me. The bus approached near a stop, that is at 5 or 6 stops from my place. I changed seat, imitating as if I needed to get off the bus. The creep moved too. God damn it, he's lying and is following me. I then waited for one of the busier stops, and God was with me, because there was a crowd of teens, probably planning to smoke and drink. As soon as the doors opened, I ran the fuck away from the bus, and crossed the roads and entered a random shop. I kept my head down, and looked out the window. As soon as the students were separating, I looked for the creep. And I could see him, looking for me. I took off my hoodie, and put in my bag. I then went to the bathroom to make my hair wet. I fucked up my hair to make myself look at least a little different, and then left the shop. I walked the long way towards the next stop, making turns at every possibility. After walking around a bit, I went to a small cafe and waited there a bit. I sent a text to my dad if he can get me. He asked me why, and I told him the whole thing. He picked me up like Usain Bolt, and then drove me home. I don't know who the hell the guy was and what the hell he planned out. I don't think he lives near me, and I fucking hope not. But whatever the fuck it is, creep in the bus, let's not meet. Creep on the bus. A few years ago I was on my way home. I usually take the bus even though I'm pretty uncomfortable with strangers being too close to me, but I have no driver's license and therefore not much of a choice. Anyway, I'm sitting there, next to the window, listening to music as a man sits down next to me. I don't think much of it, the bus is pretty full. I slide a little closer to the window, so that the man does not come too close to me. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice that he keeps looking at me, which makes me very uncomfortable, so I obviously look out the window and try to ignore him. I'm getting pretty nervous at this point. Luckily we're close to my stop. As the bus drives up to said stop, I shuffle around a bit and get up halfway. As far as I'm concerned, this is a normal social clue for strangers on a bus that I want to get out at this stop and for them to let me get past their seat. Well, this guy doesn't see it that way, so I take out my earbuds and tell him politely that I need to get out at this stop and ask him to let me through. He grins and says no, I do not want to push past him, because he then has direct access to my body and I'm now really anxious. I think he sees it and takes up even more space, so that I cannot get past him. I also notice that he looks really unkempt and is about double my age. I was around 26 at this time. Also, I'm a rather petite girl and do not come across as very threatening or something. So I say again that I have to get out, this time very loud, so that other passengers can hear me and help in case of emergency. The man lets me pass, but still does not give me much space. When I finally get out and walk in the direction of my apartment, I notice that he is behind me. I get scared. It is winter, and even if it is not too late, it is very dark and in the city is not much going on. I call a friend and ask if I can come to her so the man will not find out where I live. We're on the phone all the way until I'm with her. When I finally arrive, I turn around for the first time. The man is still there and grins at me. In the apartment we keep looking out of the window. But the man is gone. My friend walks me home later. I have not seen the man since then, but I'm still nervous about having to take the bus and always try to be as close to the driver as possible. So, creep on the bus, let's never meet again. Late night bus creep. I am a 19-year-old female. At the time of this story I lived in the worst part of downtown Portland, right behind the projects. I know I shouldn't have been riding the bus late at night, but there are some circumstances that just can't be helped. One Friday night in April, my boyfriend was hosting his birthday celebration with a big group of friends. I work on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, so I had been a bit annoyed about his choice of timing, but I understood it was the most convenient for everyone else, so it's all he could do. Since I worked early the next morning, this meant I had to ride the bus home late at night. The ride home was about 40 minutes. I had never really been bothered much on the bus before and always felt comfortable out at odd hours of the night. That night, however, felt different. Around the time I started heading home I got this terrible foreboding feeling. I armed myself with my pocket knife and started the journey home well past 11 p.m. The bus ride began entirely normal, but the feeling never subsided. I was very aware of everything happening around me. Soon, I decided to text my roommate to see if he would be in the area at the time I was due downtown, as he finished work around then. Soon I got a reply that he had been relieved early from work, but was turning around to wait at my bus stop. I'm still glad I made the decision to text him, as it may have saved my ass. One stop before I was due to get off the bus, this obese guy with green hair and a pit bull gets on the bus. I didn't see him notice me or anything, so I went about minding my own business. The stop at which he got on was only about 2 blocks away from mine. I got to my stop and was greeted by my roommate. Here's where it gets creepy. The guy that had just gotten on the bus gets off at this stop also. As my roommate and I start walking home, this guy starts trying to keep pace with us and gets way too close to me. My roommate and I are fast walking on the edge of a wide sidewalk, so it's very obvious this guy is trying to get close to me for some reason. My roommate notices as well and we fall silent. He's right behind me, and then I feel a hand grab at my backpack. I shriek and we start running. We manage to outpace him and turn a sharp corner. I look back to the guy to give him a WTF kind of look, but at that moment I notice he had stopped where we turned and is now taking pictures of me, with his flash on. This is the dead of night on a sidewalk with some crusty office buildings, nothing worth taking pictures of. It scares me that if I never followed my instincts and contacted my roommate, things might have turned out worse. Creepy bus guy who took pictures of me, let's never meet again. Older kids saved me from the creep on the bus. When I was in middle school, I took the city bus to school because my parents couldn't drive me and no school buses routed to my neighborhood. I didn't live in a particularly good place, but I never felt unsafe, probably because I was a kid and thought myself invincible. That morning I got on the bus to go to school, 6th grade at that time, so I was about 12, but let me tell you I have always looked much younger than my age. It was decently crowded, so I go to my usual spot in the back. A few stops go by, and then a man gets on and sits right next to me. It's been about 10 years now, but I still remember how looked. Tall, thin, Hispanic, with long straight black hair. There was maybe 1 or 2 seats open, so it wasn't weird that he was next to me at first. I just figured he sat in the first seat he saw open. Then he started to talk to me. I can't remember what he said at first, but being early in the morning and already peeved that I had to share my space with him, I just made vague disinterested noises at him. Then he asked where I was going. That's when my spidey senses started to tingle, because obviously it is early morning and I am a child, so I'm going to school. So I said school in an duh way. I realize now he was probably looking for me to tell him which school. A few stops went by and the bus opened up more, so I quickly went and found another empty seat. Not 5 minutes later he follows and sits right next to me again and still tries to get me to talk to him. He asks my name. I look to the front of the bus and see some 8th graders that I know from school and from riding this bus. My animal brain screams at me to find safety in the pack. I move up to the front of the bus and plant myself in the middle of them and basically press myself into them and give them "help me" eyes. The guy moves again, and sits directly in front of me. He asks my name again, and one of the boys I'm sitting with, G, quickly calls me by a fake name and turns his body so he's kind of shielding me and carries on a conversation with me until we get to our school. The group of 8th graders basically formed a circle around me and we huddled off the bus, and I turned to make sure the creep didn't follow us off the bus. Thankfully he didn't follow, but for the next few weeks I caught either the earlier or later bus in case he was on it again. And since the bus stop was right in front of my school, I was afraid he knew where I went and would show up. But I never saw him again, so let's not meet. Bus creep, I'm so thankful those kids were there to help me. I don't know if that guy might have thought I was younger than I looked, so possibly elementary school age, and thought I was young and stupid enough to trust him with more personal information. Scary bus creep followed me home at night. Back when I was attending a university, I used to work on campus at one of the dining halls during the dinner/night shift. I lived in the next town over, since it was cheaper to live in a crappy little apartment out of town than to live on campus in the dorms. But I didn't own a car, so I had to take the bus. One night, I had just gotten off a shift at work. My feet were killing me and I was completely exhausted, as I slowly made my way to the bus stop. I noticed a man much older than me sitting on one of the 2 benches at the otherwise empty bus stop, but I didn't pay too much attention to him. I simply sat down on the second bench and listened to some music while waiting for the bus to arrive. The first sign that things were starting to get weird was when I kept noticing out of the corner of my eye that he was staring at me. At first, I thought I might be imagining it. So I looked over and caught him quickly turning his head to look away. Okay, so he was staring at me. This wasn't completely out of the ordinary, since being a young college girl seemed to gain me a bit of attention from older men. So like usual, I just ignored him. That was a mistake. Again, out of the corner of my eye I saw him look at me. But instead of just staring this time, he got up and walked over to sit next to me instead. I continued listening to my music, hoping that he'd see the earbuds and take the hint that I wasn't interested in having a conversation. Instead, this man literally took the earbud out of my ear. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said as my head snapped to look at him in shock. I should have told him off for touching my things and demanded he leave me alone, but I was sort of frozen, and didn't want to make him mad. Hi," I replied quietly. He started introducing himself as Mike, and telling me that he lived in the area and it was always nice to see pretty girls like me at the university bus stop. He explained that he was a real man, unlike the boys I went to school with, and that I should go home with him that night. I was a shy, scared virgin who had never had a man be as bold as this to my face. I say to my face, because I had certainly gotten my fair share of unsolicited private pictures online by that point, but I digress. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. But that didn't stop Mike from continuing to explain to me all of the fun things he wanted to do with me at his place that night. He got into graphic detail. The things he described started out with basic things you'd expect, and escalated to him asking if I liked being choked until I turned purple and passed out in bed. I wish there were anyone else at that bus stop. But it was just the 2 of us, in the dark alone, as I counted the seconds until the bus would arrive. Then Mike took things to a different level of shocking by telling me, "Listen, the demons want me to ask for your phone number, and they say you should give it to me or you won't like what happens." He actually had the audacity to start stroking my hair. His hand was gentle, but I didn't want him touching me at all. This was shocking for a number of reasons. The demons. I wouldn't like what would happen. Why was he touching me? What the hell was this guy talking about? As though he could read my mind, Mike went on to explain, "My therapist knows the demons are real. I told her about them and she says I'm not crazy and the demons are real." He laughed, then abruptly stopped. "Now give me your phone number like they said," he demanded, and as his hand stroked my hair for the last time he stopped and gripped the back of my neck. Still gentle, but even more terrifying, I was scared, and obviously didn't want him to have my phone number. But he was taking out his phone, and I knew that he was going to call the number I gave him to make sure I wasn't lying to him, and he still had his hand on the back of my neck, so I reluctantly gave him my real phone number. Stupid, I know. But I was right, and he immediately called to check. All I could think about was just not making this guy angry long enough to get away from him, then I'd block his number. Thankfully, the bus came moments later. I sat down as close to the front of the bus near the bus driver as I possibly could, since the bus was basically empty. Mike decided to sit directly across from me. At this point, I had tried listening to music again, hoping that being on the bus and him having my phone number would signal to him the end of our conversation. However, he decided to reach over and unzip my sweatshirt, revealing my work shirt and the name tag, which I had unfortunately forgotten to remove in my haste to leave work that night. I hadn't told him my name yet. Abigail, what a beautiful name. Our daughter will be named Celeste. I shouldn't have been shocked at this point, but I was. I had stopped listening to music again and zipped my sweatshirt back up, which made him laugh. "You won't need that soon, anyway," he said, and winked at me, implying how he'd planned to undress me even further that night. At one stop, Mike tried to convince me to get off the bus with him. I told him no, that I was tired and just wanted to go home. So he said okay, and stayed on the bus. I knew that had been his stop, so the fact that he was staying on the bus worried me. I was sure this meant that he was planning on coming home with me instead. "Baby," Mike whispered to me. I tried to ignore him, but he repeated himself louder, "Baby." He had the most unsettling smile on his face as I asked, "What?" He laughed and told me, "The demons say you smell nice." I was terrified, and felt like I was going to throw up by the time my bus stop arrived. I lived in an apartment alone, and didn't want him to know where I lived. Despite my body being exhausted and sore from work, adrenaline kicked in and I bolted off the bus and ran straight home. I made it inside and locked the door. I looked through the peephole and didn't see him, so I went to carefully peek out of my window, and saw him standing near the bus stop, looking around. He took out his phone, and sure enough I started getting a call from an unknown number since I hadn't saved his number. I ignored it. When he hung up, I started getting several texts, asking where I'd gone, how he didn't like hide and seek, and how the demons just wanted to have fun, but I was being a little bitch about it. I was so scared, because he knew which apartment building I lived in, where I worked, where I went to school, my phone number, and my name. The only good thing which made me feel slightly relieved was that he didn't know which specific apartment number I lived in. That's when he started yelling outside. There were no specific words said, just wordless yells of what I can only assume were frustration and anger. I blocked his number, and kept all the lights in my apartment off as I cried with my back to the front door. Maybe I should have called the police, but my brain was so frazzled that I didn't even think of that until the next day, and by then all I knew about him was that he was a mentally unstable man, probably named Mike, who hadn't actually done any physical harm to me. So I didn't think it was worth it. In hindsight, I know that I made a lot of stupid mistakes during this experience. I ended up moving away entirely at the end of that term of school for unrelated reasons, but until then I switched to day shifts at work and was paranoid every night. Thankfully, I never saw the man again, though, so Mike, the scary guy from the bus stop who tried to follow me home, I never want to meet you or your demons ever again.